Um, we are officially live, my friends. So let's see if there's anything that Anne wants to tell us this week. Anne, go on, just give us a little
No,
story.
no.
Anne the Stone.
Oh, the stone. Yeah, there was this. Somebody brought this into my studio about
25 years ago.
probably two years ago. Oh, this was in when we were in the pub. We were doing classes in the pub, the bell,
Oh,
the Six Bells or something, and somebody in they got a farm and they'd found this. They'd found this in I don't know where they found it, in the soil. I mean, actually, when I look at it, that looks like concrete. Like the top of it looks like is something filled in with concrete. But
and I probably need to.
you've had it once, twice, but
Yeah,
now
well,
it,
I told you it was stone.
yeah, it's stone, but I don't know. Yeah, feels like concrete, but it's stone. But anyway, this is sort of chamfered off, like shaved off. And online this week,
Yeah.
somebody had found sort of really much longer than that. I mean, it was a point, just the point with a little bit of this on top, not as much as that. And they were all saying it was an antler, and I mean, we thought that was all sorts of different things, didn't we? But then, we thought it might have been, I don't know, Stone Age or Iron Age.
No, it's definitely natural, Anne. Don't worry
But
about it. It's
anyway,
fine.
you said it was natural phenomenon, and I told that to the person online, but I wasn't able to find it again. It's because I wanted to show it to you. But yeah, but that was just it's a natural phenomenon. Sorry, it's not very interesting, really. But people do think it's interesting. Um, if you find something like that, yeah. But I'm just keeping it for our museum.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough, Anne. Um, right. Okay. Richard, anything you want to tell us this week?
No, nothing from me.
Okay. What about you, Goff? Anything you want to tell us that's anything to do with the stone?
Nothing to do with the stone, but I wondered if you saw the text or the message.
Oh, the metal detecting one.
Yeah, the night hawk.
Oh
Yeah, I've decided I've decided I'll keep my mouth shut on that one because I might go off on a tangent.
Well, I wanted to know what we thought about that, but if you don't want to discuss it, that's fair enough.
Okay, I can just basically outline that, but I won't do it at this minute. I just got to get that I just got to get that thing up. I don't want to. I'll just read the headlines and
Yeah,
tell you an outline, but it'll lead me off down a little lead trackway to a melting pot. And so anything else, Goff, other than that?
no, no, that's it.
yeah, I think
Oh,
that's the biggest.
oh, hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. We can't
Oh,
stop you because I've just remembered. Read the story. One of my voyages in the South China, South
Oh, but
China Sea in
that's a private
1980.
thing. That's private.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want me to. You don't want me to say that one then.
No, no.
Yeah, but nobody's seen the image. So which are you actually on the photograph?
Yeah,
What?
I'm
What
my
the?
wife and my daughter.
All right. Well, you should make copies of this and give it to all your children.
No, it's well back in 1984 when it was in the paper, but
Yeah, but
I
it's still
just
relevant.
popped up in my photo library, and I just sent you the other text, and I thought I'd send you that out of interest.
Yeah, I won't read it out then, but that looks really good.
Yeah.
Oh, I see the other point of the message. Yeah, well done. Cool. Pat,
No, sorry, I didn't do any research.
Pat's already fallen asleep. We haven't even started. Right, Henry.
No, I haven't got anything to add this week.
No,
What are you doing?
I think it's the big story. The big
What big-
story is the metal detectors.
All right. All right. Now, before I mention this, right? This time last year, no, it wasn't this time last year. It was the beginning of last year. I had to take a few artifacts to be identified to the museum, and yeah, they were recorded, and they went on the national database, and I published stuff in Archaeology Wales, which was brilliant. And one of the things, there was 2 points to this. At the time, it was about February. The museum had just laid off a lot of staff, right? And some of the staff were from the archaeology department.
Oh,
Now, that's linked to the next point. They're advisory, legally obliged to record findings from metal detecting enthusiasts, right? So on the visits that I made to the museum, right, there was like on the 3 occasions, I think it was last year, there were metal detecting enthusiasts coming out the door, and they were saying, "Oh, we've had this reported and recorded and all the rest of it." And anyway, back to the conversation I was having with the museum staff. It was like, we don't have the resources to spend the time looking at all these artifacts that have been brought into the museum.
mhm.
And the museum are laying off staff. So valuable time of people that we pay to be there, right, are using their time to record finds that people have found in a hobby, right, that we haven't asked for them to do. So and they're expecting their finds to be recorded and identified and put on national databases, right? So the point is, this means that the valuable work of preserving the archaeology in the archives isn't being done, because the time is being spent recording the finds of hobbyists who choose to go metal detecting. And some of these hobbyists who choose to go metal detecting at night time, treasure thieves threatening a nation's heritage. Now, also reported last year, it was one of the first big prosecutions where people were put behind bars from Gwent, right? Because they had they'd been metal detected, they had not declared their fines, right? And it's only over the past few years that people have actually gone to jail for metal detecting, which I wanted 20 odd years ago. So this article is about it's quite a long article, and I didn't want to read it out in full, and I'm not going to.
Oh.
But if we look at the problem is with metal detecting enthusiasts is that every metal detecting enthusiast in Britain does it legitimately. There's no bad metal detecting enthusiasts. But then you read this: police found more than 50 holes had been dug in a graveyard overnight.
Yeah,
Now this isn't a graveyard.
that's
These are,
horrible.
but the point is, right. The point is that all the metal detecting enthusiasts I've ever met always say it's always somebody else. Metal archaeologists should be working with metal detecting enthusiasts. We're valuable. We find things that metal detecting that archaeologists
Yeah.
don't find. And I keep hearing this being, and to be honest with you, right, it's not a battle I want to fight at this minute. But as far as I'm concerned, I would ban metal detecting completely and outright, because the fact of the matter is, this country has not got the money to even keep our museums going, let alone record these people's finds.
But they're not. They're sending them abroad. They're sending them. They're selling them online.
So in other words, the point is, it goes on. As darkness falls in one corner of Wales, police officers begin their hunt for treasure thieves, a crime that would sound like fantasy if it wasn't for the evidence. In Gwent Police's patch, the hills are scattered with ancient forts and Roman remains and have become a regular target for those hoping to unearth rare artifacts for the black market. And on that again, lots of people go to the museum to have their finds identified, and they say, "Oh, by the way, I found them in a field where I've been metal detecting that the farmer knows." And no, and they've been finding them somewhere else just to get the stuff identified, just to sell them on the black market, right? So I told you not to, for me not to go down this bloody avenue.
No.
Often investigators. I'll just read this the two last paragraphs, and we'll leave this and we'll crack on. Often investigators are left with nothing but a hole in the ground, with little idea of what has been stolen or its value. Though some looted treasures have been worth millions found over the past few years. Nighthawking, as it is nicknamed, is now seen as a genuine threat to the nation's heritage. And the other point as well is, this is the other key point. So there's a guy or a woman metal detecting in the field, right? They find a hoard of coins, which they have to declare. And if they don't declare it, but when they do declare it, the state, you and I, the taxpayers, however we pay our taxes, have to pay for an inquest for the coroner for all the investigation, which costs thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds, right? Only to say, oh, by the way, the metal detector enthusiast has a half of the value of these finds. Oh, and then the state has to pay for the purchase of these finds to put in a museum. And as far as I'm concerned, right, it needs to be banned. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, but it does sound as though there's some people getting around it. This is what's happening. People are not. I don't think they are going and getting them identified.
I tell you what, right. I tell you what, I got to remember the right quote. Right, there was somebody was arrested the other day for going to Pompeii. They had picked up, I think, 3 pieces of brick and 2 pieces of tessera. They'd actually found in his rucksack, and he's going to be given a hefty fine. Right now, we wouldn't even bother in this country, and that's the reality.
Oh, I don't know. I think we don't know enough about it, I suppose, and we haven't got such. Anyway, I'll let you go. So
Yeah, I think you should. I think we should let me get on. Right. Anyway, so and now on a light note, right? On a light note, yeah. Oh God, I've got to say, I don't know if this is don't know if it's this article, right? But some metal detecting enthusiasts in certain graveyards, right, are not actually they're actually they're actually digging into the graves to find people's rings and all the rest of it. And I tell you what, if I was in a graveyard at that time of night, that person wouldn't be found again. So that's life.
Yeah. That's
So
what
anyway,
in Victorian times. It's like, everything turns around, comes back. Because
so anyway, to be honest with you, right, we don't give our sites enough respect. Oh, and my God, this article, right, that I'm just about to do, right, from Ireland is so appropriate. Thanks for that. Henry knew this thing about metal detecting would come up later, and we've got something really relevant, right? So yes, so this is really good. This links us in with people's superstition, and why in Ireland you've got thousands of these mounds in Ireland that nobody has touched, and they're not going to touch either because they're superstitious of them. So let's just let's give you this now. Hang on a minute. Oh, where is it? Right, here we go. No, we're not going to get political. Ireland's fairy forts and their power over the Irish. Yeah, the little people, land. They get everywhere.
Yeah, but they're not ancient, are they?
Some are,
Well,
some ain't. But the point is, Ireland's fairy forts and their power over the Irish. How much do
yeah,
we really know about Ireland's famous and mysterious fairy forts?
yeah.
This is in County Roscommon. Ireland's mysterious fairy forts have the power to curse those who cross them and even affect the weather. How much do we really know about these mystical structures? And on the top of this, right, there's some fact in what this article's talking about, right? It talked about if you dig into some of these mounds, right, you have bad luck. You might fall ill, right? If you dig into some of these mounds, all sorts of things can happen, right? And to be honest with you, right, I'll give you some examples. They've excavated some sites in China, right? And some archaeologists end up dying, right? Simply because um, where they're working on these mounds from 2000 years ago or 2003, 4, whatever years ago, right? They're digging into mounds that have got radioactive material, right? That were curious to our ancestors. They might have they they might have uranium. They might have anything on the nuclear table, right?
Oh,
So the archaeologists are excavating there, not knowing these artifacts, putting them in their find trays, and that evening they're starting to fall ill because they didn't wash their hands after touching this stuff. Or you might get archaeologists finding a mound like this, and there's cows being buried there, which have died from anthrax. So the archaeologists have got a cut on their, they've been traveling along, right? They've got a bit of a cut on their wrist, fair enough. It starts to go a bit off. It starts to go gangrenous. And by the time they realize that they got anthrax, they're dead. Right. So the thing is, this is serious stuff, very serious stuff, mucking with the past. Right.
mm,
And I've been into some graveyards I've been to some graveyards in the Vale of Glamorgan. Right. And there was a graveyard up by, I think it was, I can't remember. I think it was Landau. And when it was a graveyard in no, it wasn't Landau. Anyway, there's a few places in the Vale of Glamorgan, and it's got on the graves, basically saying, whatever you do, do not open this tomb, right?
mm,
And people are thinking, oh yeah, no, I'll open it. And then the reason why they're not supposed to open it is because there's live anthrax spores there, or there's Eurestis pestis, there's the Black Death, or and yeah. So now I've done that background, right? It's very important to be very wary of the past, and I hope some of these people who do dig up graves end up getting anthrax and dying a very horrible death.
mm.
But let's go to Ireland. Throughout Ireland, there are thousands of mysterious-looking forts whose reputations strike terror into the hearts of many. So obviously, the superstition associated with these mounds. These forts have the power to stop roadworks, keep people from building houses, and from partaking in a whole host of other activities. So known as fairy forts. These structures are scattered throughout Ireland, and there are thousands of them. As recently as 2017, a member of the Irish Parliament blamed the disturbing of one of these forts for damage being caused to the local road that was said went through one of these forts, because the road was unstable. There was constant potholes, and you're thinking, well, there's a reason why this was here. You shouldn't have gone through it in the first place. So numerous forts, and obviously extracting damage to these forts, not artifacts. I'm not talking about artifacts. Extracting damage to these localities, right? Inevitably raise that sense that you're disturbing the past, and the reason why the past isn't to be disturbed. There you go. So when you think about, when you look at things like this, right? And I got to keep my lip now about the previous subject, right? When you look at something like this, you think about Howard Carter. It's November. the year 1922, right? And he's already been in the tomb of Tutankhamun, but it's the pretense that he's just about finding it in front of the cameras and stuff, right? And people, several of the team that was responsible, including Lord Carnarvon, right, died as a result of opening Tutankhamun's tomb. And you're thinking, there's a curse. Well, yeah, there is a curse, guys, right? You go into you open up something that's been vacuum sealed for thousands of years, right? With all the bacteriums, all the viruses, all the spores, all the crap in the air from ancient Egypt. You release that, and then Lord Carnarvon, is shaving away, right? He cuts his face, right? Fair enough, and not so long after, he ends up dying of blood poisoning, right? Well,
Oh, God.
it's something from the tomb. It's no mystery that there's stuff in there that's going to kill you, right? There's no superstition. It's not Van Daniken here, right? It's obvious mathematics. You've got to be careful. So the structures usually make up the shape of a raised circle, which is indented with bushes and trees. It has been said down through the annals of Irish history that fairy forts are places where all sorts of mysterious happenings take place. Fairies, leprechauns, and all sorts of spirits to frequent these places, a sense of the other world. And if you muck around with these, if you're foolish enough to disturb these things, these hallowed shrines for whatever they are, a sense of hell is wreaked upon the not so helpless victims who have affected these sites. Now, Pat's been there with me underground, and you've got an archaeologist saying, do you know those holes there underground in the subterranean world? That's where people used to speak and curse the earth and curse the landscape. And you're thinking, oh my bloody God, should we actually be down here? Right. It's all this stuff, I got to be honest with you. When I was this was 1985. I went. I think that. Oh no, 1989. I went with my parents to Cyprus, and they just set me loose, and I just wandered around Cyprus, looking in all sorts of things, getting thoroughly pissed at the same time. But I went into this one set of ruins in Paphos, right, in the Tomb of the Kings. No, I wasn't drunk. And I just wandered all the way over the landscape, and I got into the Tomb of the Kings. And I think they let me in because I looked a bit disheveled. And I went into this one tomb, and I couldn't get out. I physically, mentally couldn't get out of it. And I just thought, I don't get this. I'm really not sure what's happening here. So I picked up some dust, right, chucked it back in the tomb, and I thought, I've got to give something back. So from that moment onwards, every tomb I went to, I would leave something like a flower or something like that. It gets into your head, guys. It really does. It really does. So many people are said to have died mysteriously after bulldozing these places. There are countless stories that have been passed down generation to generation in relation to these mysterious landscapes. The white thorn tree, in other words, the hawthorn tree, right? That's what they call it in Ireland, is a tree that has long been associated with spirits of the other world, known as a fairy tree. They flower stunning white flowers in the month of May. Now in West Wales, we've got hawthorn trees and we've got blackthorn trees, right? And we've got people placing orders for rowan wands, right? And rowan pendants, right? And Michelle will not cut any wood off these trees. She has to collect it because of the superstition in regards to these trees, right? Really powerful. And actually, the other thing as well is people won't buy stuff off us if we use fresh wood because they know we've cut it off the trees. They will send them back. So we've actually got to use wood that's fallen off the trees.
Yeah.
So some of you are thinking, oh, this is all mumbo jumbo. It's not. People really believe in this stuff. And also, the point is, folks, raising my voice, they believe in this stuff, that thousands of these mounds are across Ireland, which nobody has touched because thousands maybe 1 million odd people believe in these superstitions in Ireland, and they can't all be mad like me and Henry. Legend, speaking for myself, Henry, legend has it that when the flowers escape their buds and welcome the summer arriving, that the fairies dance around the tree to celebrate the arrival of summer. And there's usually more than one. And actually, I don't think that any of them are, none of them are. Hang on a minute. That's a really bad example because none of them are bloody Hawthorne, but most of those around that one are, the little ones are. So there are thousands of these, thousands of them, the power, the sense of the embodied past. And just a little bit before we finish, archaeological evidence tells us that these fairy forts, or wraiths without the W, as they are also known, were most likely places where clans or extended families lived. Circular structures were made so that the families inside could see who was coming from all angles. Yeah. The outside of these structures would have been a stone wall or an earthen bank with a palisade or something on it. Inside the perimeter, some people lived in these monuments, and then after they'd lived in them, they allowed the buildings to collapse and fall into a state of disrepair, and then they bury their ancestors there. It's a complete cycle, right? People live there. Life, listen to my words, life is death, death is life. And this then leads us directly into the Etruscans in a short while, right? The connection with life and death to some societies is the same. Life is death and death is life, right? And the Etruscans believe that. And it's the same when people look at this type of landscape. Something like that that may have been used for generations. These may actually just be burial mounds, but they burial mounds after they were used for occupational purposes.
Yeah.
One benefit of having these mysterious myths being perpetuated about fairy forts is that farmers are reluctant to destroy the structures for fear of being on the receiving end of the fairies' wrath. They're known as the word wrath in the proper context, not the name of these things, wrath. And with the superstition being alive and well, this results in a huge amount of archaeology being preserved that would otherwise have been destroyed. So in many ways, we owe a big thank you to the fairies for keeping much of Ireland's ancient past alive and well. And you know, this is really key, important to understanding the preservation of these monuments. And lo and behold, if you see a monument in Native America and you're wandering around Ohio in the woodland and you disturb one of these mounds, this is an island naturally, you disturb something like that and you end up with your throat being slit by some of the Native Americans, all good on you. You shouldn't have been looting or going across that site in the first place, right? So the point is, having a connection with history is really important, and obviously without history we don't have an identity. And I need to shut my mouth because I've been saying things that I shouldn't be, and it's not the best thing to be doing. Right, so right, let's crack on. My agent has had a word with me recently, so I've got to be a bit more wise on what I say. Right, but so that's why I swear a lot at the beginning, just to get out my system. So that's good. Right,
Yeah.
so what we're going to do next, we're going to look at Etsy and work out what we sold this week. No, we're not. Right, so I thought we have done the Etruscans before, and one thing that we've done with the Etruscans, we've looked at their the sarcophagi, and we've looked at the figures on the top of the sarcophagi, and we've looked at they're made of terracotta, wood, alabaster, marble, stone, all that type of stuff, right? So I thought, yeah, I'd love to do that, but I'm not going to too much tonight. We'll do a little bit. And I thought, what we're going to do, we're going to look at the artwork inside these tombs, right? And try to have a sense of deep intercourse with these holes in the ground, and understand that we've got the painting and how things go. And somebody said something really weird last night, right? So weird. Last night we were supposed to finish at about 20 past, and then we ended up going on until about 22. 10. No, we're not going to do that tonight, Pat. But the point is, the point is with all of this, is that when you look at this type of history, we have ways of our mind opening. Oh, and thanks to you guys, we are going to be looking at the Second Dacian War versus versus Trajan next week. But I might chuck a bit of the Spartans in next week, and the Thracians and the Scythians, and we look at the Lycians also. And whenever we do get to the Romans, or maybe we'll completely bypass the Romans and go straight into King Arthur. I don't know. But anyway, the point is that this has got added sort of color onto this image. But you know what we're looking at is the first stuff I want to say is linking in with what I said earlier on. The Etruscans lived and died in the same manner. This is a representation of an Etruscan house, and there's one point about this. There's underground, we don't see any representations of windows. We see representations of doors, and it's very likely the Etruscans in their living homes above ground, and none of them survived, right? Because the Romans wiped their history above ground out. None of them survived. So what we then have is that what we base our understanding of the Etruscans on is what's underground. And some of those key questions: did the Etruscans keep slaves? Probably no. Did the Etruscans have big battles, raping and pillaging across the landscape? We've got very little evidence for it, and the answer is no. So getting a sense of depth with the Etruscans, and the biggest problem is with the Etruscans, the Italians have mainly taken out all the sarcophagi out of the chambers underground, and they've like put them in museums and SHIT, and I'm just thinking, well, why can't we see some of this stuff underground as it's meant to be? You know, I'd love to go down these worn steps to the hypogeums underground, and I'd like to think, right, okay, oh, everything's here, the pottery, yeah, let's just sit down and maybe have a Snickers bar and have a little bit of a drink and chat to these sculptures in there. That's what you're meant to do, you know, meant to speak to the ancestors, right? So I think we need to. The only way of connecting with the past is not to have everything in museums. The Chinese have learned this bloody years ago. You go to Chinese sites, even the site of the discovery of Homo erectus in China. You go to these sites and it's all there, and you're thinking, oh right, you know, we can see where they're all meant to be. In Britain, we take stuff out of we take stuff and put it in museums, and it sort of makes it really sort of antiseptic. There's no septic in seeing these things underground. It's very antiseptic, you know. And to try and understand what we've got from the Etruscan world, you've got to look underground, and you've got to do reconstructions like this. So the many columns that we see with the Etruscans underground were square. They like the square sort of square columns. They were square column people like the ancient Egyptians, right? And so let's just have a little bit of a thing. And I've got to be very careful not to work out that I've got 70 images to look at today and not rush them all at the end. So I'm probably going to be, going through them a little bit more rapido. Valley, as they would say to me as I was working in Spain. So Etruscan architecture, when we think about Etruscan architecture, somewhere around the 900 years BC, somewhere around 27 BC. And I'm going to make a statement. I use the word BC in its right context, but Goff does this. We listen to the BBC Radio 4 and Radio 4 Plus, and you have these odd experts on there who said the third millennium, and you sat there thinking BC, and you're thinking, when is the third millennium BC? And by the time you've worked it out, they're talking about something else. Why don't they say 2000 years BC? And this is another one, right? There's this one expert
2000 years BC.
Yeah,
Oh.
I just said that. Yeah.
Anyway, you're not talking about 2000 years BC, are you?
Hang on, I'm using as an example, and shut up. So when you talk about the Etruscans, if somebody says, "Oh, the Etruscans are doing this and that," the 7th century BC, you're thinking, right, okay, is that the 600s? Right, okay. and they're talking about something else. And I think, why do they do that? Why don't they just say the 600 years BC? It's ridiculous. Oh, and there's this one expert on the BBC saying, oh, it's definitely 25 years BCE. And I'm thinking, oh, get a life. Anyway, so I don't do any of that non-religious crap. So anyway, the Etruscans themselves, they're really into their nuts and braces around 500 years BC, right? And then from that moment onwards, the Romans are gradually raping, nicking, pillaging their territory. But one thing that I can honestly say is that the Etruscans gave and taught the Romans everything they knew except warfare, right? The Etruscans made Rome. And no Roman back in the day would like me to say this, right? Julius Caesar would hate me. And actually, these people, right, from what I can work out, there's dottings in sort of texts and stuff, but we don't have a single Etruscan historian with a document surviving. But we've got Carthaginian ones, and that's really friggin' strange, really. When the Etruscans wrote a lot, they wrote a lot. We find it in their tombs and stuff, but we're still struggling. And the Romans did such a number on these people, yeah. So the Etruscans were considered builders in stone, wood, alabaster, and other materials of temples, houses, tombs, and city walls, as well as bridges and roads. Oh, by the way, do you know the reason why we don't find many alabaster Etruscan sarcophagi? Does anyone know the answer to that one? I can give you the answer. It's quite simple. This is a quiz question, right? When they were making the periwigs throughout sort of, 1740s onwards, up until when periwigs become sort of not really fashionable after the French Revolution, right? 1789. Bastille Day and all the rest of it. Because lots of the aristocracy had their heads cut off, so they didn't need their wigs anymore. But anyway, so towards about 1780, they would go around loads of different tombs around Europe, getting the alabaster out, right? And they would pound it and make it into a very, very fine dust.
Yeah.
So alabaster dust is finer, right, than marble dust or chalk dust, and it's not very toxic alabaster
Like
dust.
talcum powder.
And it's 100. You can batter your bum with alabaster talcum powder until you go green, right? It's absolutely perfect, right? So the point is this alabaster. So they would go a lot. All the Etruscan, most of the Etruscan alabaster effigies are gone, and that because they were used for periwigs, and the Italians were massively into their periwigs. So the French were as well.
Okay. Well, they
They
had a
were.
lot of alabaster as well, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, when it's basically when they ran out of alabaster from the quarries, that the Italians loved alabaster. We loved alabaster, Oh, the other point as well is, Anne, shut up. The other point as well is, if you go to Abergavenny Church, ever been there, Anne?
Abergavenny?
Abergavenny Church, the main church there. Well, in the back there, right? In the back there, you've got broken off bits of the effigies in the back there. And that's because the rich people would go in there and break bits of the alabaster effigies off and grind it down and use it for their wigs. Yeah, it's there. So
I didn't know that about alabaster.
Yeah, there's a well-known statue of David with his member showing in alabaster.
Oh yeah.
Well, no, it used to show it. Apparently,
fell off.
No, honestly, 1780s. There was a group of Italians.
Can you imagine someone with a cheese grater?
Yeah, honestly, they took bets on who's going to break the thing off this David statue, and they snapped it off, and they got in trouble for it, and but it was used for a periwig.
Oh.
Oh, and by the way, talking about periwigs, right? I don't know. I don't know if Pat was on the trip to Colchester, but when we were field walking, right?
Yes.
When we're field walking in a field and along the footpath, somebody found like a weird clay figure figurine thing, and I said, "Oh, this is a clay figurine." I identified it as something I'd seen at Cirencester. It only turned out to be a Roman wig hair curler.
Oh, a
Amazing.
Roman hair curler. Oh,
Yeah, Roman hair curler for like a periwig, because the Romans had periwigs as well.
oh.
So right, and there anyway. Oh my God, Anne, I'm gone. Right, shut up, Carl. Move on. So the only structures remaining in quantity, in anything like their original condition, are tombs underground and some city town walls. But we do get things like this, which is remains of a temple, an Etruscan temple that did survive, but not very much of it. Right,
I,
not very
I,
much at all.
I did go to Montepulciano to see the museum there.
Is that that's in Tuscany? Yeah.
It was wonderful, yeah, Tuscany, and you went down into the tomb, and it was great. It was great. I know it was sanitized and everything, but they did have some real artifacts in some glass cases, in the walls, like in
Yeah.
the cave.
Good.
I
Good.
would recommend it to anyone.
The hypergeum underneath the museum, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, Anne, let's crack on. So what we're
Sorry.
looking at is that when we start to look at Etruscan architecture really developing by the 500s, you can see something like the pediment, and like this, which would have been on the end there. This is actually all terracotta, right? And this is actually from what they found in the ground from an Etruscan temple, right? And just think about it. All of these figures, these figurines, would have undoubtedly required a mold. So you can imagine that if somebody's going to go through the effort of making a mold for these, they're going to make number of them for a number of different temples, right? So all the stuff that we got from the Etruscans is actually down on the ground. But you could say that the Etruscans are heavily influenced by the Greeks, right? But you look at some of the art from the Etruscans, it's Etruscan art, right? But Anne, as you're the artist with this, you'll be able to work out quite soon when we get to that. But we won't do that yet. But look at these figurines again. So this is Etruscan art at its best, and it does make you. Well, basically, right. I made this statement last night, and I'm going to say it right in the right context. If the Etruscans had somehow appeased the Romans by, i.e., putting some poison in their water system and wiping all the Romans off the face of the earth, it would have meant that there would be no Christianity. Islam would never have occurred. And Britain would have probably developed anyway into wherever. But the Etruscans there would have been a renaissance. There would have been a risorgimento of Italy and all these other things that begin with an R. We would have been a much better place with the Etruscans in charge of Europe. And you would have had the Etruscans, you would have had the Carthaginians, you would have the relatives of the Phoenicians, you would have had the Greeks, you would have had the Egyptians, because the Egyptians at a point really didn't have an army at all. So the only threat would have been people from Persia, right? And the Persians couldn't have taken over the whole of Europe. I don't think they would have. Could you imagine the Persians in their silks wandering around London? Anyway, so and in turn, the Etruscans influenced the Romans and with lots of things. So this is a considered architectural renaissance continually, where the Greeks and the likes of the Etruscans have got these similar styles, which are very different from the Carthaginians, right? Which is quite odd. We've seen Carthaginian work, and it's like more military and sort of more manly and more sort of tradery like. But again, this is really interesting. And one thing that we don't read about is Hannibal's reaction when he's coming across the Etruscans. The Etruscans were a very small state by the time Hannibal had looted and pillaged all the way through Italy by 209. Was it 209 BC? Or somewhere like that. Anyway, the point is that say so basically then the Etruscans linking with Roman architecture. Now, Etruscan architecture is multi-columned. Roman architecture has got a lot of columns, but this is a lot of columns. This is more like a Greek style, sort of more ionic, more flat, sort of not as tall as Roman stuff, not as in your bloody face as Roman stuff. This is more, just sort of Greekish. Oh no, was it? And was it Clash of the Titans that shows the temples at Messina in Sicily? And you look at that film and you see all the sort of Greek art. That's really good, and that's the type of stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
So the main monumental forms of Etruscan architecture is very much when we see what's underground, sort of to perpetuate and to validate what's above ground.
Mm.
And when we look at something like this, we can sort of get a humble idea. Now, one thing that we can clearly see from this image is the carving. This is carved out of solid stone. Now, usually it's like a softer bath stone. You're talking about sort of like a tufa rich vulcanized type of stone. And this is like a bath stone. So underneath Bath, it's full of all these sort of quarries and stuff, and that's what the Romans did. But you can clearly see that the roof furniture there. You can see the beams. This is carved in stone, but they didn't need to do that. But the beams from a Etruscan house are replicated in the roof, right? So that's one sign that they're replicating above ground. The other sign is this typical Etruscan architecture with a main central beam followed through. So it's this architecturally sound. And then you've got the steps leading down. And this is one of the tombs, Capitelli. This is the Banditica necropolis, which will show you the location of that. But I'm going to bring in Henry on this. Henry will know that we don't have stuff like this in the Tomb of the Kings, with the Hellenized Roman Greek stuff, Tomb of the Kings and Tomb of the Queens in sort of Paphos, because the point is that their peristyles and their verandas and their courtyards and everything that they're showing with the architecture of Cyprus is a style for the dead, right?
Mm.
The Greeks and the Romans and the Hellenized peoples of the landscape. Basically, Hellenism is a Greek form, but we specify it separately. But life and death to the Romans have two channels. Life is life and death is death. But to Etruscans, there's no yin and yang. It's interbred. It's the same thing, right? Because you're preparing for death in life, because in death you're so advised in life. So this is why lots of the steps that we actually, this isn't me just talking trollocs, right? This is me trying to say why I feel and know, right? Because originally my live shows were meant to be looking at different cultures around the world, including the Etruscans, which I didn't do that, but next time I will. But the point is with this is that a few points. How do I know that this is replicating stuff above ground? I've just explained it, right? How do I know that people would go down here on a regular basis? Well, they were open, right? Okay, fair enough. How do I know that? Because at the top of some of these steps, there would be a stile, which was also fairly worn to stop the sheep going down there, and the goats. A goat would go down there and live down there quite happily, little buggers. I to be honest with you, if I had one of these here, right, I'll find all 21 sheep down there. Right?
Yeah.
I really would. Anyway, the point is you find the stile slightly warm, so that means that people. Let's look at this logically. So people are going over the stile to go down underground, right? Okay. So how do we know they were doing it deliberately? Well, if you look at the steps are worn, not just worn a little bit, really worn. So that must mean that generations of families would go down underground. Okay. How do we know that they were actually, sort of identifying themselves with those underground because they would leave flowers. We in some of the sealed tombs, we'd find in some of the vacuum sealed tombs that they eventually sealed up, we find this evidence. We find vases. We find various broken pottery. We find other things left there as if, you're leaving gifts. Well, okay. So am I taking a bit of a step into the dark by and this is at the end of the presentation, that you go down here and you're communing with those underground? Why not? How many times have we been in dark spaces and just talked anything and just tried to connect? I've sat along graves and spoken to the dead. I've communicated. I've had those conversations, and you might think, for example, grandmother, should I be involved with this woman? And then you think about conversations that you had with your grandmother when she was alive, and oh, is that what you think, grandmother? You wouldn't really like her because you didn't like women with black hair, or okay, she's got black hair, maybe that's not a good idea. So you have those communications, you're communing, you're sort of having that sense of address. So it's part of life as it is part of death. Now what you're seeing here is very much the early stages of cremation and burial in regards to the earlier part of the Etruscan civilization, and we're looking at, say, like the 900s. But by the time you get to sort of these, you're looking at about the 600s, right? And basically what's happening is when you get like these above ground, it's because the rock was too hard and you couldn't do the stuff underground. So when archaeologists are looking in depositories like this, they're really not finding the artifacts because they've probably been looted by the Romans, and there's nothing going to be in there, right? But when you look at that, that's very unusual.
Mm.
Because that's probably representing an Etruscan house. And how do I know that? There. We know from an image the other week that there was a copper cremational urn, which I said looks like a house, right? Looks like an early Etruscan house from like the 800 years BC, right? This looks exactly like that object. There's no windows in it either. But that's made out of tufa and soft stone, and this again opens you into a world of they're stylizing how they live, because if you go, they look like homes, they look like houses, they look like houses, right? So it's that connection with life, right?
Yeah.
It's they're um, um, in death you are, the memento mori, a reminder of death. So you've got to go and see your relatives to remember that you're going to be like them one day, right? But you've also got to use their connection to keep them alive. I'm going to say this quite emotive thing, Anne, right? I'm going to say this. I was in Barry yesterday, and my dad's best friend wife had only just died a few days ago, right? And this guy thinks I'm a bit of a loon and whatever, and he'd always disappear when I turned up. But he just stood there and I talked to him. I jumped out the car, gave him a hug, and I said, "See, that was all that fun and stuff over the years, right? It disappeared." I said to him, "Whatever you do, right? Don't forget your wife, right? Don't let anyone tell you to move on. She's your wife and she'll always be your wife, and never forget her." And he's already had people saying that, you should get over it. And he only died a few days ago. And you're just thinking, this is modern day society. Why do you need to move on from anybody, right? I remember Dennis
yeah.
a few years ago. I remember my grandparents. I always talk about my grandparents. I won't let them die because I'm always talking about them, right? So the Etruscans were those types of people. I would have made a brilliant Etruscan. I really would have, right? Because I would have had this constant connection. So these elaborate tombs, they were away from the cities. right, and the towns, but people would go and make the effort of visiting them, and this is the point. This is oh, and actually, can you see the wear on that step?
Yeah.
I'm not saying any more, right? And again, this sort of shape, this raison d'etre of the past. So these were generously filled with grave goods, and after a while, some of these got so full of the likes of monumental furniture, of sort of effigies and all the rest of it, that it's likely lots of these effigies and stuff would have been carved underground, but the ones above ground, obviously, they would have been moved in there. This is like a little weird one. Look at that, like little miniature streets of housing which house the deceased.
Yeah.
There is a differentiation between those richer people and those poorer people. And I remember saying that if you've got a small Etruscan tomb underground, it might be a small Etruscan tomb because the people who built it lived in a small house,
Yeah.
not because they were necessarily poor, because that's the house that they lived in. So obviously they're typically building underground when it's tufa regions, sort of southern Etruria, southern Tuscany, sort of closer towards Rome. The burial was cut from solid rock below ground, which is relatively easy. However, the stuff above ground, they're sort of going to be sort of living. This is sort of one above ground, but it's like, look at this. Now we'll look at this a little bit more clear in a short while, right? But this is that's in relief, the carving of the band in there. The first thing I saw when I saw this, I thought this is medieval, right? This is bloody medieval, but it's not. It's Etruscan, and it can't get far more away from the medieval period, 2,000 years, even if you tried. So this is further away from the medieval period than we are, right? We're only 500 years away from the medieval period. So these people are 2,000 years away from it, but their art looks really similar in some places. So lots of these were reused over generations. Every generation doesn't blame the one before. They're part of this. So so they were reused generation after generation. Some of them got so overcrowded because people wanted to be there, right? That when they were sealed, those are the good ones. When they were sealed, archaeologists would then feel, and then what would happen? You can't communicate with those ones down there now because it's all been sealed up. So now you've got to have another tomb underground to sort of relate to the new building, and so it's all sort of that sort of link and connection. You try to keep that going. Some of these underground, for example, I got to be honest with that, that's beautiful. Some of these underground, there's the site we're looking at. This is Banditakia, and Monterosi. That's where they are, right? Sort of above Rome, right? And that's where we're looking at. So there's the Bay of Naples down there somewhere. So this is what we're looking at, and there's been cases. Look at that. And we're going to look at this in detail, but I think we do this at the end actually. So when we're looking at these, they found some of them still sealed, and what they've done, they've just left them. What they've done, they've because the air is so there's a vacuum. So what they've done, they've drilled a little vacuum sealed hole in there and put a little camera in there, right? And you can still see flowers, with the stems still intact and so on. And you're thinking, well, let's not go in there, because what happens is when you open a vacuum sealed landscape like this, the oxygen just gets to the flowers and just it turns to dust. Andronicus saw that with his excavations in 1956 at Vigina, which is in the old Macedonia, not modern day Macedonia that's nicked the Vigina flag. But at Vigina, you see that when Andronicus opened one or two of the tombs in 1956, just for a second, he would see the flowers still standing in the vases. And as he's looking, the flowers would crumble and just turn to dust in front of his eyes. I'm pretty, you
Well,
know,
they're like
and,
Egyptian.
Andronicus. Yeah, Andronicus is amazing archaeologist. Wonder he didn't end up with some horrible disease, like these Egyptian tombs as well. Very much like so. So this is a tomb of the leopards. This is as I say in Banditakia in the likes of um, Tuscany, Etruria, southern Etruria, and they've found the necropolis across this landscape, right, contains six burials. No, contains 6,000 burials. 6,000 burials. And this is amazing figure. So this must not just been for the very wealthy, it must have been for everybody, right? For the community.
6,000.
And also I'm reminded that I have got to next week grab those absolutely frigging brilliant images that that Henry sent me last week of Pompeii that we've got to use next week. So Henry, thanks for the reminder, love. He's just texted me. So we're looking at this and we're thinking there's loads of images like this, loads of them. So you can imagine that this represents a home, right? Some of these have columns, chambers, and when these are rock cut ceilings, and some of them have the beams, as you can see in some of the earlier images. But you know, one person said last night, this is what kept us going last night for longer, so I'm going to say it, get out the way. They said, Carl, the roofs here, the patterning on the roofs doesn't look right. And I said, what do you mean? That looks like a carpet. And I thought, oh right, yeah, it does look like a carpet. And then you're thinking, hang on a minute, right? Yeah, hang on a minute. And what about that, right? If these represent the homes of people, they represent the homes of people, right? But what they're doing, they're replicating their carpet on the ceiling. So in other words, it's like a weird connection. They're basically saying, actually, this is our world, right? We choose to be above ground, and you are choosing to be below ground because you're no longer moving and wandering around. So the tomb of the leopards. We'll look at this in detail. It is great. It's fantastic. We won't discuss this too much, but you can clearly see the leopards on there, the flowers, the men, the women, the chairs, lounges. It's all there. So when you think about this, the fresco paintings, which does not seem to have been a Greek influence, though there's a sense of Greekness in the style, right? In fact, there's lots of styles with this. I can basically paint a little bit of Egyptian. I can paint a little bit of Greek in you. I can, you know, for example, some of these taller figures look Egyptian. Some of the sort of the other bits look like Roman, you know, and sort of look at that there, and you're talking laurel wreaths and so on, and wow, yeah, loads of stuff. And I can remember the laurel wreaths last week when we were talking about the Dacians, the silver laurel wreath. See lots of different styles. So again, this is the earlier stage, and so this is what I said I wasn't going to do, but you can clearly see in the background these cabinets with these with the terracotta effigies on them, and you're just thinking, hang on a minute, right? If these were individual molds that we used to create these effigies, and they were individual, wait for it, they would have had to have destroyed those molds. A lot of work's gone into that. So you know, this is all top stuff. So the Greeks, when the Etruscans were creating these, the Greeks had stopped using tombs, chambered tombs, to put their loved ones in. But the Etruscans kept painting their tombs all the way to the end of the Etruscan ruled in 27 years BC. So when we think about that, we get an understanding, and we get like a connection. And there's like lots of false doors. There's lots of sort of connections with understanding this landscape. And I think maybe what we should do at that stage, at 8:18, is we're going to take a break. Actually, that'd be the perfect time actually to take a break.
Okay.
And before we take a break, I need to take a little bit of a check. So we've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 images to look at. Right, I need to speed up after the break. 50 images still to do, guys. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. But it's Goff's fault because he hasn't stopped talking. Right, okay then. Let's have it from you guys. Henry, let's have it, babe. And I'm gonna. Henry sent me a text. It probably says, "Stop talking crap."
No, that was Herculaneum. So it was kind of showing the artwork.
Ah,
Yeah.
right. So actually, that would be a good one to look at next week in the scallop shell type design there, with the banding. And do you know what I should do? Right, actually, Goff, not Goff. Can you remember the name of that piece of artwork? Because I can go straight on because I can talk about this briefly. I know the one you mean.
I can't remember it at the moment.
Right. So what we'll do, Herculaneum, very best art, and I think that'll come up. Herculaneum
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, that was one of
Hang
my
on.
photographs.
Is that the that's the mosaic one, isn't it? That's yeah, that's a wall mosaic. That's not a fresco. Wall mosaic.
Oh.
We'll probably get it straight away, and
I
you'll
think
see
it's a
what.
wall painting with a mixture. I think it's fresco around it with the.
Actually, we don't need to say anymore. It's this one here. It's the house of Neptune.
Oh.
You can see those colors there, right?
Mm.
Beautiful. And it's this one on the right here I want to look at. So it's this.
Oh,
Now,
very sure.
I don't think. Well, we don't really need to say what this is made out of because that I think you know, it is probably fresco and mosaic and painting.
Yeah.
But what you can see there is this is, even from what we're seeing with the Etruscans, this is very different, right? Different look. You can also see that lots of Roman figures are naked, right? We do have naked figures with the Etruscans, but in a way, Roman art is more sort of adaptive to statements and gods and so on, and all the rest of it. Nymphaniums, small water gods, and sort of this type of arrangement. One of the things that
they don't have long hair either.
they don't have long hair. They don't have their hair in. And the other thing as well is, with the Etruscans, they're not obsessed with gods, where the Romans are, and the Greeks are obsessed with gods.
Yeah.
My God, you couldn't do anything in Greece without appeasing the gods. Right. Okay. Let's go for it. Goff, anything?
No, okay. Waiting for the next bit.
Anne. Good. Anne, anything?
Is there a bit of a known, I don't know, colours or something in there? No.
What?
Yeah. Is there, you know, I'm thinking of the Minoans, and
Oh, right. You're back to
are-
talking about the Etruscans. Yeah, there's a
are.
little. Yeah, the Etruscans love doing sea scenes, and like the Minoans did as well, 1,600 years old BC. Yeah, exactly. So there is a link there. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Pat.
Nope, nothing for me. Sorry.
And we've already done Henry, I think. So yeah. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back at what?
Jeff, what have
You
you
got
got to say?
Ricardo.
Who?
Ricardo.
Richard.
What about him?
Exactly. You haven't asked him any.
You didn't ask Richard.
Oh, Richard! I thought we'd ask Richard. Richard.
No.
See, you got friends, Richard.
No,
And Jeff?
very interesting.
Yes. Who's
Jeff!
Jeff?
It's in the dark.
Who's Jeff?
Goff.
We've done Goff, you pillock!
Oh, shh.
Right, we're taking a break now. You're cramping my style.
I'll go home. All
All
right.
right. My
Yeah.
agent Alex is watching this, right? She's going to be absolutely.
Oh, it's my fault. It's my fault. I should
Yeah, well, it doesn't do my career much good if I'm going to go for big fucking. My
I
friends
should
swear.
blank myself out. Oh, I should just keep quiet. I know Pat knows she's professional.
Man, shut up!
Right,
Right,
we're going out. We're going to
Yeah,
have coffee.
yeah, Anne, I think you should. I've got to fondle the sheep. I'll see you in a minute.
All right then. Oh, bye.
Oh my God, I'm losing the will here. Ready pins in it. I don't know. Okay. Eight. 8 bags of food. 8. 8 bags of food. I don't know. I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should teach these classes naked.
If I give them X, Y, and Z, they would all be happy with it, and there wouldn't be any issues or any problems. Oh, I had a pound for every time I heard that.
There's a lot to be said for a blow-up rubber doll.
I went to the physiotherapist today about my wrist.
Yeah, well, and do you agree with this statement, right? That they should give all 16-year-old boys blow-up rubber dolls in school, so that they don't get interested in girls too early, and it reduces the population. No, it's true. It's true. It's if you know we get boys practicing on blow-up rubber.
They don't need rubber dolls.
Well, what,
Boys don't need rubber dolls.
why
They
don't boys need
know
rubber
what's what.
dolls?
Oh,
What's
but I
that?
mean, I suppose no, it's not about having a rubber doll.
I would have. Me and Richard would have had a wonderful time with me and Richard went to an
Well,
old school. We
I
had no
mean,
experience.
if
Hang
you
on, shut up, Anne. When me and Richard went to an old boys' school. Now, if they'd have given me and Richard a blow-up rubber doll, at least we'd have had some experience of women when we went into the real world. And Richard agrees completely, wholeheartedly with that statement.
oh, I came in at the wrong time, didn't I? Oh dear. Yeah, okay. And you know, I mean, it's to do with sex education, isn't it? But maybe I don't know if is somebody talking about it? You know, like in the
Yeah, they are.
Oh right. Oh well. It must be you know.
Well, yeah, there was a politician. He was saying that if they're going to give sex education properly, they should give the boys blow-up rubber dolls as well as condoms. And it's actually a Labour MP. And me and Richard have got. I'm sure me and Richard would have been better prepared in the world if we had have had a blow-up rubber doll when we were 16.
Yeah.
I didn't need one.
I'm flabbergasted. No, I mean, you know, it's honestly, Carl, you and your rubber doll, honestly, I mean, you did get one eventually when you were 30. Oh, how old were you? 35 when you had your first rubber doll.
That was for professional reasons.
Might have been older than that. Well,
I got in trouble with the police for having that blow-up rubber doll.
Yeah. Where? You took it to, I know you took it to
Yeah, but hang on a minute. I'll tell you all about. Hang on a minute. I just got to get a light on in here. One of the lights are off. Hang on a minute. I'll tell you about the story. And I've told this story so many times that you just don't listen. I'd like to tell it again.
I'm just going to tell you about my experience of the physiotherapist.
Oh yeah, go on, hang on. Tell us about your experience about the physiotherapist and we'll crack on. Go on.
Yeah, I'm telling Pat, she knows I've got one walking stick, a white one, for my partial sight. And I went into the physiotherapist. My wrist is doing very well. But she said, I said, oh, I've got this stick, I said, but I haven't been able to use it because my right hand, has been broke. My right hand, my right wrist has been broken.
Yeah.
And so she said, oh, I can give you another one. She said,
What, another wrist?
I've got two walking sticks now. So
Yeah.
I'm like one of those pole walkers, with the two sticks. I can't do anything with it. No, I mean,
No, and I got to be honest with you. We all, on behalf of everyone who involved in my classes, right? We really appreciate you telling us that. We really do. We really do. And I would say, and
it's
because
just
of
as
the trip,
interesting as blow up rubber dolls. I'm learning
yeah,
to
but I got
walk
to,
again.
and I was supposed to be directing this, right? After coming back from Colchester with the blow up rubber doll, right? I couldn't get rid of the blow up rubber doll.
Oh,
So I tried to burn it in the garden. And somebody phoned the police to say that I was burning a body.
that must have been was that the third rubber doll?
Right, let's crack on. I've had enough of these blow up rubber dolls. It's
Yeah,
just
I
driving
know.
me.
I know.
Yeah,
Right.
and you're just cramping my style.
I know. I think I better go. I'll have a break for 6 weeks.
No, you can't. You're the entertainment.
No, you can't. You can't have one without the other.
Oh, that's what my granddad used to say. There's nothing wrong with a bit of the other.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, well, it's a bit of the other. But I hope you're going to come up. I hope you're going to show the pottery, the what they put the cremations in the pot.
A cremation urn, love.
Yeah, and they got eyes on them, and that's the way.
And we can't do everything with the Etruscan culture, okay?
No.
You know what I mean, right? I do this, right? People come along each week to listen to me ratting on and troddling and dawdling and boddling and choddling, right? And now Anne, just let me get on with it, Anne.
All
I
right.
don't mind being interfered with, right? But there's enough. Good.
I'm going to put my audio on.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, love. It's not a bad idea. Right, so all of these are in the area of Monterriso, right? Now, we're just going to gently look at these tombs without giving them any names, and then we will start giving them names and putting the last little bits of detail on. So 6,000 of these monuments, but only 200 of them are of this level, are of this standard. The hypogeums underground are the more ornate, the more advanced, highly decorated, painted plaster on the walls. The painted tombs of the necropolis are the largest documentation of the Etruscan world. In fact, these individual tombs, particularly the 200 out of the 6,000, right? These represent a very advanced visage of the Etruscan pictorial world. I'm not going to say anything about this because this image here, but this is very, very Etruscan. But when you look at this, and I will give the name which will give it away later, we look at this and we think we've seen something like this before. Think of ancient Egypt, all the way back to 10,000 years ago, when you saw on the border between Egypt and Sudan, you saw the paintings in a cave, the cave of the I think it was the Cave of the Bathers, right? And that's like a watery type scene, and totally different art, but it's sort of in the same type genre. Now, you look at these, you see so many things that you can pick out. Um, Quotational, direct images of their world. Look at that there. Two wonderful sets of couches with a family, you know, they're all chatting away. Typical Italian family. It's more so life rather than religion. It's more so life rather than too much of ceremonies. There's a bit of mythology with some of it, but this cuts into the cutting of what's underground, and you can get an idea again of the ceiling, that sort of hailing of, say a carpet above, which is down below. You know, there's lots of anecdotal stories with the corridors and the stairways leading underground. Many different subjects, many different styles, rituals, animals, trees, dance, musical instruments, scenes, and we look at this, and we look at the reds, we look at the whites, and we think, oh, what's going on here? It's sort of like something out of a Victorian book. And this little bit of a niche here, which would have held a sarcophagus at one time, an effigy. Obviously, lots of the painting in some of these has faded away, but you can get an idea from what we're seeing with these initial images. And again, the couches and the discussions and the world and the animals, and look at these wonderful little birds underneath them wandering around, and there's a duck there, and look at that, a cat. So we see this, and the best of these tombs, the tomb of the leopards, the tomb of hunting and fishing, the tomb of the augurs by priests, the tomb of the triclinium. Yeah, we'll explain all that. The tomb of the blue demons, the tomb of the bulls, and so on. Many artifacts have been found in here, and you know, Anne's a little bit disappointed that we're not going to be seeing the pottery. But I thought, well, if we need to come back and see pottery and things like that, we can do it again. But there was so much to go through with looking at Etruscan civilization, just even a little tiny little bit of a drop. This is just one tumal area, right? There's so much underground. Many of these artifacts are in the Tarquinia National Museum. Was that the museum you were on about, Anne? The Tarquinia National Museum, National Museum,
No, no.
where and what we've got.
It wasn't a
is-
national museum. It was in a country town, but it was still very, very good.
Yes. Again, talking about the Banditakia necropolis in
But I never
Monte.
saw any of the painting, and it's great seeing the painting today.
Yes, good. In Montezerio, again, it's interesting enough that the burial ground, and in particular these 200 underground, these really luxurious painted sets of pictorial pages in the Etruscan world, the Etruscan book. These were only designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2004. And what you've got there, you've got the colours. You know, look at the hand there. Look at those two hands. You've got one draped sort of like that, and you've got one above, thinking, you know, this is what we're talking about. You know, we're having this conversation, you know, that type of thing. And there's the wife there, the female figure, and just thinking, well, you know, what are we going to do? You know, what's happening tomorrow? What's happening with the children? You know, that type of. They love their chaise lounges, and what we've got there. We've got what looks like a little bit of a writing desk. It's some pseudo 3D, some of this stuff, and lots of colours. You know, nice greens, nice blues. Lots of this has faded naturally with the bacteriums and stuff underground. And UNESCO would say about this landscape, the depiction of daily life in the fresco tombs many of which are replicas of Etruscan houses, is a unique testimony to this vanished culture. So again, using those terms, again, I've said this for a long time. I didn't know UNESCO actually said this, but that quote again, many of which are replicas of Etruscan houses, the homes of these people. You're directly into the diaries of the world, their life, the testimony of these vanished people. And again, even though we're talking about the earlier periods, and we're talking about the jars, and we're talking about the things that represented their early homes in the 800s, again, this sort of looking through a door, and again, just sort of thinking that those two figures, left and right, have wings, angelic figures with Etruscan writing, and we're looking at this, and we're seeing, and you could just push that door open into another world, underground world. And again, this is akin to looking at some of those monuments in Scotland, those souterrains, where you, instead of having like indications of doorways, which they wouldn't because it's solid stone, and anything from the Neolithic period and Bronze Age would have long since washed off the wall. But the little idea of niches, the little idea of the underground world being able to communicate, and that's really important, which you can sort of see a parallel there. But again, I keep saying this looks very medieval. Some of this art looks medieval, but it's 2,000 years away from it. And again, back to this, we're talking about above ground. What we've got is that above ground, we see this. They're known as the Villanovan tombs, early Villanovan tombs. The Villanovan period was an early period of the Etruscan world, the 800s. But what we've got there, these buildings here, are what's left of, not what's left. These lead down the steps down below into the tombs, and originally there would have been wooden structures above here. Some of them would have actually had the homes of the people themselves, but not in most cases. No, this is a burial landscape. However, there would have been buildings above here, wooden buildings that lead you to your ancestors' homes underground. And again, they've done little bits of reconstruction here and there and around the landscape. So again, the landscape that we have, and the sarcophagi, and the 200 at Banditakia necropolis. The Banditakia necropolis is a burial ground that runs all the way from the 900s BC all the way to when the end of the Etruscan world completely, the Romans stamped out, banning the Etruscans, 27 BC, probably even the use of the Welsh language, not in Etrusca, even the use of the Etruscan language would have been banned. The Romans hated these people so much. What you could say is it's like, actually, there is a parallel. It's like, for example, after the unification of or the absorption of Wales, after a very short war in 1535, 1536 by Henry VIII. He's absorbing Wales into England. Welsh laws disappear. Welsh identity disappears. The Welsh language is no longer allowed to be spoken. All these different things. And you stand to think, well, the Romans did that to the Etruscans. But they were more successful, the Etruscans, than Henry VIII, because our language in Cymru Wales does still survive. Again, more representation, and these steps going down underground. And I'm being visited here by Morgoth, the Dark Lord, my dark cat. So when you think about this, what's underground is visiting power and prestige of the people who created them. And there was probably a lot more wealth in the Etruscan world than in the Roman world. And the reason why I would be saying that is that where the Romans are using a lot of their excess income in fighting wars and arming their soldiers and paying soldiers, the Etruscans used their wealth for the better good of the community. And that couldn't be said anything less or any more than that. So obviously the possessions and lots of these things are in museums, but in some of them, in some of these underground, what you do find, Etruscan writing, sort of demon-like figures. This is probably coming to about the 200 years BC. They can say demon-like figures in my notes, but they're like more angels. So there's no sort of idea of demonism and stuff. They're more like angels. And you get an idea that that's an alabaster figure there. I'm pretty sure that's an alabaster figure. That's one that survived. There'd be lots of these painted in there. When they were full of sarcophagi, obviously you couldn't go down there, visit anybody anymore because you were only left at the doorway. So you had to build another one of these, right, that represented the world above. And again, thinking about this, sort of the earliest sarcophagi were quite simple, with just a normal lid, but obviously things developed and they become sculptured, marble, alabaster, terracotta, even wood. And again, just thinking about that figure there in the script I've got. So on the walls, some of the sarcophagi initially decorated with the people associated with them, a bit of mythology, a bit of symbolism of these people's lives in Tarquinia. And the walls of the tombs occasionally now look towards figures of the underworld, angelic demons. I wouldn't want to call them demons, but notes call them demons. So in other words,
Like the angel of death.
lots of these figures are on the wall to sort of guide you to understand that this world is around you, below, and it's an interesting world below, right? What would you just say then, Anne? I'll take a slurp of my drink.
I just said the angel of death.
But I don't. I'm not. No, I'm not going to say that. It's not the angel of death, because the idea of death and life is a modern conflict, right? It's a modern conflict. They were not conflicted between death and life, right? They weren't conflicted with a process. They were conflicted with the fact that there's no process when it's already in front of you, right? You've got this tomb underground. You'll end up down there one day. You'll end up having children, and then they will carry things on and stuff. So again, lots of this stuff is manufactured locally. Obviously, we're working underground. And look at this. This scene of a sport. It's a little bit of Greek there, isn't it? Thinking about sport, but the figures are very non-Greek. What we? Oh, yeah, you said Greek. No, non-Greek.
I said chunky.
So the one on the left there, he sort of looks a bit sort of statesman-like, but he's got dark hair. This dark hair like makes them look a little bit like Persian, but again, you've got the birds. You've got sort of wrestling, and you've got other scenes, and you've got the augurs there on the left hand side, and they're basically they're priests and sort of organizing things. And this one coming up now, right? And I'm very keenly aware of time now, so I know where I am time. So look at that, and it was like we're looking at that and we're thinking Renaissance art, from the late medieval period in the late 1400s, and you're thinking, no, this is a little bit more. This is a little bit more lifelike, the gowns, the silks, and the mansk, the coloration, the shoes of the individual on the right, the reds, the blues, the birds, the trees, the action. It's all going on there, and maybe in a way we don't need writing to tell us about their sense of art, their etiquette, their dancing, their respect, their sense of being with other people, right? Yeah, there are one or two scenes that will come up that are sex-induced scenes, but then again, sex is part of the real world, part of life. Now, what we usually see, and we'll get into detail soon, what we usually see is that when we do think about this one, the walls lead us to a place, right? So we're being led from the entrance there to the back wall, and the side walls lead us to whether you're looking at a banquet on the back wall and so on. So this would be typically what an Etruscan house would look like inside, except there's nothing on the floor. It's almost as if the floor's been taken and put on the ceiling. It's really weird. You don't have floors. You don't have mosaic floors. You don't have slab floors. You have the floors are actually carved, but it's carved out of the rock. But it's that sort of the floors are the things that make you think the floors are bare, right? Because it's almost as if you've gone you are in the ground. You're walking on the ground. And maybe if you walk barefooted in these, you're directly connected with the stone, which is the final layer, the final part of the journey. You come down from the steps into here, and your feet are touching the bareness, the harshness, the hardness of the ground. So life can be hard, and you're reminded of that. And again, this art itself is so advanced, is so. I might see something like this in a book from the Tudor period, 500 years ago, and you're thinking, okay, you might find something like this in a book from the Victorian period, for example. I've seen things like this, but this is. Oh, let me get my dates out. This is 2,500 years old. This art with the colours. And you could take that, Anne, right, and you could make that into a heraldic plaque.
Yeah.
Part of the base of a heraldic plaque. And only that guy on the left there.
Yeah.
That's the only representation of a warrior that you might see. Was somebody wanting to say something? No. Okay. That's the only representation of a warrior that you might see on the left, and maybe it's. I'm not really sure that that's really a javelin there. It seems like a spear-like thing, but it's not really rocking as a military scene. It's obviously there were Etruscan warriors and soldiers. You needed them to keep peace. You needed to keep things going. You didn't want the odd raiders coming up the coastline and nicking some of your people. You needed to keep law and order. It doesn't mean to say you're a warlike people. And again,
illustrations. Somebody's
look at that.
Yeah.
Look at the muscles, the ribs, the belly button. Look at the wings, the blue hair, a blue demon. Holding up the ceiling in a way that's quite significant. He's holding the ceiling. He's got his hands rested, right? In this representation, he's got a hand resting on the ceiling, and you're thinking, hang on a minute. Is he holding the ceiling up? Right? Is he holding the ceiling up to allow you to visit underground? Is he there to remind you, right, that there are two worlds, but it's the same world at the same time? And obviously you've got the serpent there. You've got like a serpent wrapped around the legs. And again, you don't just see leopards in one tomb. You see them in here as well. These are blue leopards. And again, this is quite a smaller tomb, and you've got like, if you see there around the side, you've got like that's where the sarcophagi would have rested, right? And if there weren't too many sarcophagi here, you just go in there and rest on the one side as you'd enter the room. And again, this would have been full. More of these doors. Now we start to look at some more of the perspectives of these, and I'm going to crack on another hidden door. And there you go, a lion and a cat, and more of these figures, ladies. You've got musicians. You've got observants. Maybe that's a laundry scene, right? Maybe that's what there is. Maybe that's what the barrels are for. And again, these smaller tombs, and this isn't a decorated ceiling, but it doesn't mean to say it wasn't decorated. And then again, it's just plain. Maybe some people saw that. Now, guys, I feel we haven't got a massive amount of time now because I don't want to go a massive length of time today. But I just wanted to think about these just briefly. So the Tomb of the Leopards, we look at a little bit of this about the end, and we bit more descriptive. Taking a drink. Tomb of the Leopards has some of the best preserved frescoes. However, I don't spend a great deal of time on this one because everyone talks about this one. But I would say that the banqueteers, there they go, the banqueteers, elegantly dressed, male, female couples, attended by two nude boys carrying serving implements. But why not? The women are depicted as fair-skinned and the men as dark, in keeping with gender conventions across the Greek and Egyptian world. So it's sort of, again, men, right. If we think about the other convention, right, where we would see in northern prehistoric world, the convention is the other way round, where the women are seen as dark and the men are seen as light, right? So the men should be seen and the women shouldn't be seen, right? So you'd enter a building and it's the other way round. It's yin and yang there. But this is what we've got here. The convention, women are fair, light, and childbearing, and men are dark, dominant, or maybe I'm using the wrong words there. But the scene, the necropolis of Monterosi, Tarquinia. This is also known as the Tarquinia tomb. They refer this to the best preserved murals at Tarquinia from 470 to 450. There's lots of these across the Etruscan landscape, but this again with the two leopards above, it's a lively color, and it's animated depictions of rich gestures and a sense of the richness of the Etruscan world, the Greek and Attica art. However, lots of this is naturally Etruscan, right? And this is this. I'm going to read this out now, and maybe what I should do is keep the scene there. 1 second. Let's just go here. Keep that there. This is actually this was discovered in 1875, and a certain unknown archaeologist writes about it in the 1920s. A certain Mr. D.H. Lawrence of Arabia, the archaeologist who died on his motorbike, I think it was around 1936. However, he went down there and he described the paintings in his traveling essays, sketches of the Etruscan world. Now remember, this guy is an archaeologist, so he's talking about it from an archaeological perspective. Here we go. The walls of this little tomb are a dance of real delight. The room seems inhabited still by Etruscans of 6 centuries before Christ. A vivid life accepting people who must have lived with real fullness. On come the dancers and the music players, moving in a broad frieze towards the front wall of the tomb. I've described this myself. The wall facing us as we enter from the dark stairs, and where the banquet is going on in all its glory, so that all is colour, and we do not seem to be underground at all. Again, he's repeating what UNESCO have said and what I've said, but in some gay chamber of the past. And I would say a real gay chamber of the past, a real sense of history, a real sense of representing above what is below, but not in the Christian sense, a sense of who they were, that they saw the below as part of extension to their life. Sorry to keep repeating that. So next we're going to go on to these ones here. Very aware of time, folks. So what we've got here, this is the tomb of the augurs, which is a very different style. This is actually earlier than the 471 and the Tomb of the Leopards, the Tomb of the Priests, in other words. Now, the tomb is located very near the Tomb of the Leopards. And this tomb is one of the first tombs in Tarquinia to have figurative decoration. So in other words, before this, they weren't painted, but now they're being painted. And some people believe the style, the fresco, that sense of what this is depicting, right, is something more out of the Greek school of art, and that sort of solid, overbearing door. It's known as the Tomb of the Augurs because some people argue they're not really properly priests. They're people sort of, I don't know, sort of in the middle between priests and sort of that. But again, that's the door. Where does the door lead? That type of thing. And again, there he is, sort of just sort of hand on his head and just saying, got a nice bit of representation of plants there as well. Now, this one, if we were to finish tonight and say, right, that's it, which we're not, we're going for about another 10, 15 minutes max, Pat, so don't worry, we're not going to be too long now. So the Tomb of Hunting and Fishing. Now, this is actually very interesting. It's sort of the similar date to the last one, about the 520s, 530s. And I would say that when we looked at the Tomb of the Leopards, Lawrence of Arabia didn't have radiocarbon dating, and he's describing this of like 600 years ago, 600 years ago, when he wasn't too far out, you know, and that's really interesting. That, but however, they're cracking on. So this is some people believe this is unquestionably one of the most beautiful and original of the Tarquinian tombs. And when we say original, this is original because look at that. Because lots of historians say that this emphasizes the reduction of humans to small figures in a large natural environment. Big figures, but little figures. And this does not have any precedence in the Greek world. This is Etruscan art, well and truly. This is as they're developing in their own ancient genre. So if anyone says, you know, what's going on here? And I'm looking at this and thinking, my French, bloody hell, you could squint your eyes and you could probably go maybe to sort of Korea, Japan, China, that sort of interchange when they're starting to do birds and sort of their different styles, the different arts back there. But this is Etruscan. It's not influenced. So they're fishing. Yeah, you've got a dolphin there. And there you got, and somebody said this is through all of this, the only real scene of violence is actually the stone slinger slinging against the birds. But then again, the same person said yesterday that obviously people had to eat. So I think that's a really good point. Yeah, they did. So again, seeing that, and then this is the tomb of the triclinium. The word triclinium is the word that the Romans used for dining. So what we got three separate styles, real separate styles: Etruscan style, sort of Greekish type, sort of pseudo style, and then we've got this sort of style, which is a mixture of loads of different things. So again, people are being drawn to the feasting at the end table. Again, the feasting at the end table, the feast at the end table, right? There are so many sort of the final supper, you know, with you've got Jesus in the middle, right? Everybody's being drawn, Sistine Chapel and so on. I believe the steppers in the Sistine Chapel. You're being drawn to this. You're being drawn to that end scene there. And again, other people have said this is the most famous in the Etruscan tombs. So this is the finest ever. But everybody's got their own choosing. So quickly you can work out that the ladies have got the one in blue there, and the man, the one in sort of right, he's probably saying, you know, you don't want to be with your husband anymore, that type of thing. So again, the ceiling, the walls, and again, you know, what do you need when you're eating? You need a lyre player. You need birds. You need trees. You need a sense of where you are. When you're underground, you need a sense of where you are. You need a sense of trees. You need a sense of flowers, birds. And this is akin to people. I'm going to make a sort of non-link completely. This is akin to being sort of some burial sites in Britain, for example, the Tomb of the Giants on the Gower, the Braos tomb. There was never a capstone on that, and the bodies were placed in there, and they were exposed to the elements, and birds come in feasting along the flesh of the bones and stuff. That's open to the elements because people wanted to be within life, but you're also being within life with portraits of life. This is portraits of life and plants as well, and birds. That idea, that relationship with birds, and getting there and sort of understanding that. And again, we've got this scene. Unfortunately, we've got to crack on, but again, we've seen this, we've explained this, and again, I'm loving this in the moment. And then the next one, these are not brilliant, these ones. This is not really well preserved, this one, but some of the stone coming through. But what we've got, this is known as the tomb of the blue demons. And why? Well, the blue demons on the wall. The demons, these figures. I don't think Anne conjured up evil earlier on. But no, when she said, this is linked to the sort of the underground, isn't it? Being led into the underground. But but then again, demons and things like that are throughout mythology, through all those stories. When we think of Homer's Iliad, and we think about all those things that we can remember when we were a child, the Clash of the Titans and so on, demons and stuff. And yeah, and actually I'm thinking about Sinbad the Sailor from the Arabic world, those blue type skin demons from that. So tomb is named after the blue and black skin demons which appear in an underground scene. So there's a play on words there, an underground scene, underground, which isn't underground, which is underground, because this is part of their lives. Work that one out. And again, thinking of this, and what we've got Tomb of the Bulls, and I do believe this is actually predating everything that we've seen. And the blue demons one that we just seen is probably about the 400s. This is they say that this is probably more like the 540s, the 540s, some of the earlier tombs, the Tomb of the Bulls. And it is one of the rare Etruscan tombs which have erotic frescoes, because there are two people copulating there, and there's a bull in front. Interesting. Move on. And there's a bull there who can't be asked, and there's a sex scene there as well, and you're just thinking, okay, this is the more favored way we say that people had sex in the past, but there's not many representations of sex. And actually, I'm more interested in the detail on these bulls, and you're just thinking, look at that there. And we saw this earlier on. Very interesting, very exciting. And seeing them going into two separate rooms beyond them, that's really, really there. Nearly at the end, folks. And again, going down underground, there is lots of blue. That's going to be a lapis lazuli type ochre paste to get that. And you've got these little like plants on the ground, and we've got that. Obviously, we know that the man's behind and the lady's in front because she's got paler skin. But however, that might not be a lady in front. Anyway, again, this scene, looking at that scene a little bit more detail. We've looked at this when we understand this. And again, it's that sort of color, that play, the completely different art form of where we are. The completely different sort of sense of directing different art forms. And this is a different art form, I would say, than say this. There's lots of stuff going on. And yes, what we've got here. And I said that this is a very rare one with erotic scenes, no doubt. We've got more erotic scenes at the end. This is the Tomb of the Whipping, in the necropolis dating to the 490s, and named after a fresco of two men who flog a woman in an erotic context. And this was found in the 1960s, but this is badly damaged. So nothing wrong with a bit good old whipping, nothing wrong with a good old flagellation. And in a way, it sort of paints another part of their society. But this is not Saturnalia. This is not sort of the Roman abruption and corruption of sort of late December, right, where we get Christmas from the 25th. It's something else. It's part of who they were, and obviously another little bit of a painting there associated with the whole frieze. And this is the tomb of the Orcus. And they're, what you've got there, they're describing sort of a figure, a demon-like figure there. Again, we've used the word demon, but around Etruscan writing there and Etruscan writing on the right, it is about. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically move away from this a minute. We'll come back to this at the end, right? I just wanted to mention this again. If you want to go out, look at this, look at the tomb of the wonderful leopards, and obviously a bit of a lion there, another leopard. You don't really see much in the way of hunting scenes. And this is again another tomb, the tomb of the lioness, and again back to the tomb of the leopards. A lot of detail there, and those leopards rather than looking at each other rather than fighting, right? Very interesting. So what I'm going to do, I thought I'd just chuck this in at the end anyway, and you're just thinking my description. This is terracotta, and this is fondly in the Tarquinian Museum. And when you look at this and you engage and you understand what's going on, and what is truly going on with this is that this is a couple. They're very, very lifelike. It's known as the tomb or the sarcophagus of the spouses. The sarcophagus of the spouses. It's again terracotta, and you're looking, and the faces look at you, and again on this sort of couch, this sort of chaise lounge type thing, and this would have been highly decorated. We know it's highly decorated because there's some signs of the ochre on it. And this is probably more better to describe this. You've gone underground. You've gone underground. The steps, and there's dad and there's mum, and they sadly passed away before you had your child. And you're down underground, and you're saying, "Mum, Dad, do you want to hold the child, maybe?" And this is why the arms are out there. The arms are out there to receive something. They're out there to receive you. Maybe some flowers, and you talk. You put your it's almost as if they're there waiting to sort of handle your child, or you could put your hand in your mum's hand, and there's your dad's hand. Dad sort of mum's talking away. She's saying, "Oh, you should do this and that," and dad's going with his hands around, almost this sort of gesture, with the hands out, thinking, "Oh, mum's going to go on for a little bit longer. I do love her." And mum's very happy there, and dad's very happy. Why would mum and dad be really happy? They're really happy because there's something going well for your life. You're not going to go and take a newborn down there if things ain't going well. That's my description of this. That's my way of looking at this. And the final note, the final thing to say about the Etruscan world is that the Etruscan world is very alive, and there's so much to be said about it. We didn't do their pottery. We didn't do their individual artifacts. We didn't do their many sarcophagi, right? But we did part of their world that are some of the pages in the very lost pages of the Etruscan idea, which would be an idea which was sadly lost and expunged by the Romans, but not enough that we can still see the Etruscans today. So on that note, I'm done. And I do like talking about the Etruscans, as you can tell. It's a really interesting topic, and it's a really nice place to be. So I'm going to find out if there are any questions from any of you guys. So and we've got somebody saying, "Well done, chaps." Thank you very much there. Right, anything from you, Richard?
No, nothing for me. Very interesting.
Good. We got one person online called Nylog who's actually going over to Rome. So that'll be good. Hopefully I might be able to get some images off them. So I don't think in time for next week to look at Henry's Pompeii stuff. So right, talking about Henry, anything from you, darling?
Very good, very interesting. I didn't appreciate their art, and their actual drawing of animals was very advanced compared to if you look at pictures of the 15th and 16th century.
Yeah, and it's like when you think about yeah, very respectful way of using animals. They're not killing them. 95 to 99% of the images about animals, you don't actually see them doing anything with the animals. You know, you see them, the animals are dotted around because they're part of life. You know, this world up there and world down there is all part of life. You know, the trees and so on. You're not out killing everything all the time. That's what they're trying to say.
No, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It reminds me of, I saw an image of the silicone pine today that, and I just thought, why are we so hateful of what's around us and until it's gone? You know, the Romans just wanted to get rid of these people, but it's still with us. We can still learn from them. Right, Anne, anything you want to say?
Oh, I just was thinking, you know, yeah, it's beautiful artwork, and it's I can see how a lot of artists and illustrators have gone back in time and, you know, used art that they've seen in the past, you know, and
Yeah.
it's not and brought it into the future. I mean, they look modern, you know, the illustration. But I was wondering whether they had an idea. I know it's just mythology, but whether it was you know, the idea of paradise. There's a lot of painting that look like paradise that you would imagine, that, you know, you're at peace with animals and that sort of thing. But also there's um the carnal side. Well, it's not really carnal, it's just the you know, well, reproduction, creation, you know,
It's all there.
yeah, it's
It's
all there really. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, it's really nice, really good. Glad I saw this one.
good.
I can go and look at it somewhere.
Thank you. And I'm going to say it, we've already looked at Richard, haven't we?
Richard.
We've already asked Richard what he thought tonight, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
See, I just thought I'd put that in there just in case I'm losing it. Right. We'll do Goff and then Pat, and then we'll call it a day. So, I would say just a reminder. Oh my God, you nearly got away with it. Just a reminder. Don't forget the class money's going to be due, because next week is is basically going to be the end of August. So your class money's the usual 50 is due. Right. So let's see if Goff is due to say anything.
Yeah, it's obviously a very sophisticated culture, and yeah, it's very interesting, and lots of nice images. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And I got to ask, be really cheeky of Goff now. Goff, when are you going over to Madeira?
Oh, not until next year now.
But you did promise me a bigger Madeira cake, didn't you? That might last 2 days.
Yeah, I'll send it by ferry. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, well,
a
shh.
big one.
Me and Goff know that size isn't everything. Right, it's what it tastes like. The Madeira cake is lovely stuff. So, somebody said to me, It's not a Madeira cake, but I said it's from Madeira. What the hell is it? Oh, right. Oh, it's from Madeira, is it? Oh, therefore it is a Madeira cake. Look.
It is a Madeira cake.
Because
Yeah.
it's from Madeira, exactly. I don't care. Right, okay. Right. Definitely. Well, he's not going to get it from bloody Tuscany, is he? Right,
No.
Pat.
I'd never seen those before, ever. I'd never even heard of them. So it was really good to see them,
Oh.
admire
No,
them.
I go on.
Yeah, just they were great. Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. So, I think that's a nice end to the evening, and we've managed to do this by 9:30. If there's nothing else anyone wants to say tonight, it's been a delight. And next week we're going to be bringing a lecture that you want me to do specifically, and I don't want to bore you too much to do with Trajan's column, but we've got to do a lot more about I just want to do that little bit about the Dacians and try and get that little tiny period in, and Trajan's column, and maybe reading a little bit about that and trying to understand their world, and Emperor Trajan as well. We've got to do some Romans sooner or later. Oh yeah, if we're doing the Scythians and the Thracians, yeah, Spartans, could check them in as well. Right, that's me done. Thank you very much for your support.
Bye-bye.
And
Bye.
continuing. Good night, Goff. Pat,
See you
Bye-bye.
next
Bye.
week.
Bye.
Henry,
Good night.
Richard, and Jeff. Good night, Jeff.
Have a good
Right,
week.
Dave.
Bye.
Have a good week, Henry.
Right,
Night.
bye.
Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Night.
Adios.
Adios, amigo. Night. Oh my God. Oh my God. Right, okay. I've got to do one. I've got to have a word with my acting agent, Alex. So she's wanting to speak to me. Got stuff to do tonight. God. She's she's hard work, but she's great. Anyway, so I'm hard work more like. Right, so here we go. New chat. We've done that. 1, 2. I've got to mention my OCD tonight. Oh. OCD. So Alex, Spotlight, and Spotlight. Thinking of that, yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching tonight, and everybody, lots to get on with. Can't do everything at once. Thanks everybody for watching, and Nylog and Baron Badger, and diolch yn fawr i chi. Nothing there. 1, nothing in chat. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Nothing in chat 1, nothing in chat 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20. Done, 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 done. Done. Nothing in that window, and nothing on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Done. Nas 'da chi. Night, folks. Thanks for watching.